I, as Chair, Deborah Hassan, would like to welcome you all to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting, 21st of June 2023. And we will start with the karakia. Whaka taka te ho ki te uru, whaka taka te ho ki te tonga, ki a ma kina kina, ki uta, ki a matara tara, ki tai I aki ana, te ata kura, hea he o, hea hu ka, hea ho hu, te he mori ora. Thank you. Are there any apologies for today? I have one from Councillor Miller. Can I have a mover for that apology, please? Nicole, and a second. Sophie, all in favour say aye. Carried. I believe there's no identification of any extraordinary business. Are there any conflicts of interest that I'm not aware of on the register? Today's agenda? No. Public forum? No. Tab 6, we have the terms of reference with regards to this committee. And they're just for reference, yes. And page 13, confirmation of the public minutes, tab 7. Okay, thanks, Sam. Seconder for those minutes. Bob? Any amendments to those minutes that are required?
Madam Chair, yes, I don't seem to appear on the present the list of present attendees.
So you were at the meeting meeting at the 10th of May?
Yes.
Okay, I'll record that correction. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Are there any carried? Are there any matters arising from those minutes that anyone would like to bring to the attention of this committee? No matters arising. Okay, we'll go to the chairperson's report. And I will take this as read. Are there any queries with regards to the chairperson's report? Councillor Dane Phil.
Yes, I have a question to you as the chair of this council. Thank you for your report. We are the council of elected members, and my question to you is, as our chairperson and the person who collates our thoughts and the philosophies behind this committee. And I'm not looking for an answer now. I'm just looking for, it's a question I'd like an answer at some point. How are you going to ensure that you draw out from us our thoughts and pull together a cohesive philosophy that adds direction forward for our future of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, as opposed to just measures of council activities and performance? So I'll just leave that question with you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I can probably answer part of that question. With regards to our delegations, I am the chair of this committee and we have a deputy chair. We do actually meet with staff. Just to let you know that we have the option, all of us, of forwarding reports to the appropriate subcommittee agenda. And I would encourage this. Then we can discuss whether we want further information with regards to those reports, and have staff bring back reports in matters of interest to our community. But it has to be with the agreement of the whole of this committee structure. Otherwise, it just gets a little bit unruly with regards to people wanting reports for the sake of reporting. It has to be meaningful reports that come before this council, and they have to be for public interest across our district, primary. So they're my thoughts on your question that you've just asked. with regards to how we should actually be encouraged to submit reports to these meetings.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Jane.
happy to move your report, but also in response to Councillor Dean's question, it's a question that does get raised, has been raised before, around how do we expect the chair to draw out our understanding. It comes back to the position that we were elected to, our due diligence, and reading the agenda and making yourself heard. I'm happy to move the report.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a question on the attachment to the report.
Okay.
I'm not,
I'll just get it.
yeah.
I'll get a seconder for the chairperson's report. Sam, thank you. Which attachment are we talking about? Attachment A or attachment B?
attachment, concentrations and trends of nitrates in solvents, groundwater and surface waters.
A.
And how does that align? Yes. Thank you very much for sending the information through. I had a good read of it. I was reflecting on somewhat of Councillor Miller's deliberations in the past around nitrates, but taking this report into consideration, how does it align with our One Water strategy? And perhaps that's something to be answered later on.
It does align with our One Water strategy as it provides data from Selwyn that should be considered along other data and how we actually manage the One Water strategy.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further queries. All in favour say aye. Those against? None. Carried. Group Managers Report. That's page 67.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. I'd like to take this report as read, but I'd just like to note that as my last report to this committee, just thank you for the work that this committee has done over its last 4 meetings and the growth that we've seen in how the agendas have been developed and how the committee's operated. So thank you very much.
Any further questions on the Group Managers Report? Can I have a mover for that report, please? Phil and Bob. All those in favour say aye. Those against? None. Carried. Thank you, Murray. And as chair, I would just like to thank you for your contribution to the asset management, transport and infrastructure of council over the past 11 years of service, and thank you very much for that. Right, first up will be the operational and delivery, tab 10, page 70. Thanks, Gareth.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. There's obviously quite a lot of information contained in this month's operational delivery report. So I'll take the report as read and invite questions. But before I do, accompanying me today, we've got Kate Long, who is our surface waters lead, and also Mike Patterson, who is road safety, but is leading council's process through the speed management plan. And also, whilst I'm here, can I take the opportunity, please, to introduce 2 new key staff members I know councillors will be interested in. With us, we've got Jeff Rhodes, who's the new transportation delivery manager, basically takes care of the roading team. And also, as mentioned at the last meeting, Samantha Sam Sharland, who's the school's road safety advisor. Thinking on questions, there is a lot of information in this report. Thinking on questions, Madam Chair, shall I just proceed through section by section and see if there's any questions arising that way?
If that's the way that you'd like your report followed, or
easier rather than
yes,
around.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, cool. In regards to the first bit, in terms of the operational performance indicator areas, just a quick overview. All the contracts are performing reasonably well, but consistently high KPI scores is an indication that it's time to review the KPIs as well. And perhaps introduce a few more stretch targets for some of them. Operational activity areas, high level, and we'll go into this speed section later, but in terms of high level roading activities, it's been a fair bit of continuation work around the district, and as you can see, there was bits and pieces there. Any questions on roading operations? No? Okay.
So I've just
Sorry?
got one, and I'm not sure that's
Sure.
for this part here, whether it's for later, but I know that there's a bit of work being done outside Whedon School. I'm just wondering if there's been anything that happened with that. I'm actually looking past you, your people behind you.
Yeah, I'm not sure Jeff would be aware of that.
Is that for now or for later? I
Later?
can raise it later if you like.
You raise it later.
Yep.
Okay, water, potable water.
Any?
No. Okay.
No.
Wastewater? No, I'm expecting some questions now.
I did have one quick question, actually.
Sorry.
Are we allowed to know where it mentions in wastewater, it mentions about a trial of biosolids application? Am I on the right page?
Oh, the trial application to land at the pipes, that's been going on for the best part of a decade now.
Yeah,
We
okay.
don't seem to be able to get there. The rules keep changing as we go along, but
That's what I was going to ask. Okay,
we're still pursuing it.
cool. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, surface
water.
waters. Okay,
Any? Do you want to present this, Kate, just as an overview, and then I'll ask for questions?
Do you just want me to,
just any questions, we'll take it as read.
Yeah.
Questions.
any questions, don't you?
Okay. First up, Lydia. Thank you.
I'll go first. Yeah, great report. With Sheffield, I'd like to thank Kate and Mark for the work that they've done in Sheffield, and quite an immediate response and work plan completed. Well, semi-completed there. We had put forward a query about the possibility of some culverts being upgraded to try and take the flow from land back into our drainage channels. And I was wondering if there was anything discussed around that. And then I'll touch on Hororata and the work that needs to be done behind the township. And I know that the residents there are feeling extremely frustrated, and it's frustrating for council as well. And I was just wondering if there's an update on the work that it says that we're looking to undertake to remove fallen willows in our rating area. But the CRT team in Hororata have asked for a map of crucial elevations, a map of rating areas, a budget plan and time frame for any works, and if any of that refers to the community-led plan that has been tabled at council. Like there's speculation that the riverbed behind the township is 5 metres above the township. So every time it rains, there's quite a lot of anxiety in the town. And at the end of the day, I actually just don't really know how to help these people that want to protect their assets. You know, we've done asset work on the Selwyn Bridge at Colgate, and I just think there's some poor people down the road and they're trying to protect their assets and they're sort of at loggerheads. So I'm just sort of wondering where we can go and what we can do to help them.
Yep. So
Sorry.
Other questions then?
So for the culverts relating to the Sheffield work, so we're looking at the sizes of the water race that's surrounding the area there. If there's any other tip out options, if that would help alleviate the water coming into the town in the first place. In terms of the culverts, more closer into the town, relating under the railways and
They were the ones under, Tramway Road.
oh yes, yeah, the
Going
one that we
back.
spoke about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those have been water blasted and checked, and at the moment we don't see any need to increase the size necessarily because it's restricted by the culverts under the railway. So that's probably where we'd leave it for now. And then for the Horata questions, so for gravel build-up, there has been a lot of gravel build-up in the Cordes Stream and in the Horata. Gravel extraction is an option with the permit for that works, and because the Horata River is rated by Selwyn under the land drainage scheme, there is some work that we could potentially do there, but the limitation as always is the mudfish who habitat there, so any work needs to be consented under the land water regional plan. So that's just usually timing. This doesn't mean we can't do things, it just means it takes a lot longer. Can you remind me any other parts of the question about Horata?
The work behind the township.
Oh, so any work outside of the township we see as falling under ECAN's jurisdiction, because we're looking at remediating water that's entered the town, and Happy Jacks we see as part of ECAN's scope.
Yeah. So I guess I just note at the bottom of page 73, it says additionally, we're looking at removing fallen trees from Horata River within the rated area.
So yes.
With the guidance. So where is that?
So there's some trees down near Derritt's Road,
Yeah.
which is the very edge of our rating area. And we're looking at removing those. We've been talking to ECAN compliance officers and river engineers about what we can and can't do. And so we've got a works plan with them, and we're looking at implementing that in probably in weeks type of time frame, because there is doesn't have the same habitat restrictions at that section.
And are we able to provide the Horata CRT team with the crucial elevations and the map of the rating areas?
We can provide the rating area map that we have for our Horata River scheme.
Yeah.
For the elevations, I don't believe we have the full detail that they are requesting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's something we couldn't look into.
And is there anything in the next annual plan or budget for some works to be completed there?
I don't believe there's any specific budget for work in Horata.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Yeah, as far as Happy Jacks Creek go, we actually got a consent and we widened it and deepened it a couple of years ago. Is there anything left in that consent, or because last time we had a reasonable flood, it overtopped in several places because it still wasn't big enough? So would the same consent be able to be used if we were able to deepen that out? So, because a lot of the water coming into Horata is coming over the side of Happy Jacks and then down the road and through the paddocks at the back. So I was just wondering if instead, because we had major problem with dock and mudfish. So that was one question. The other one was the permanent pump in the roundabout manhole. To me, and you know, I live like 5 k's away from there, and every time it rains, I go over there and have a look and how far the water's coming up and that. And the biggest problem is that it comes down Hawkins Road, and then it gets to there and it gets blocked up, and it just doesn't go through. So Daniel had planned to put a pump in there, so I was wondering if that could be the first thing that we looked at and got a cost, because to me that would save that roundabout area.
Yeah. So in terms of the pump, that's something that we had on our immediate kind of works and ideas of what we could do in the area. The idea of the pump was supposed to be to alleviate the pressure at the start of a rainfall event. It's never going to fully save water coming in. It's at the bottom of the hill really for the
But see, in the past, what's happened is that the pump hasn't been there. Hawkins Road is backed up, and by the time the pump gets there, there's a backup already.
Yeah, exactly. So we were looking at putting a
backup
pump
could be-
permanently.
wasn't
Yeah.
there. I think it would save a lot of that. There's houses that do get flooded
Yeah.
in that area. So I think that is quite important to be looked at. And just a question, that all the culverts down Hawkins Road, have they all been made to the same size?
Not all the culverts are the same size on that road, but the ones that are not, they were increased, and some of them were not increased as part of their works plan because they were deemed as being sufficiently sized, and the ones that are oversized for, that's the difference in the sizing.
Because that's another thing that's obvious, that it does back high behind the smaller ones. So
we haven't found any issues with the culvert sizings on Hawkins Road since the increases.
okay, no, thank you.
Shane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to the team. All te rara tātou katoa. Support the review of the KPIs. 3.2, the budget maintenance, roadwork network maintenance contract is impacted significant inflationary pressures. Do we have an idea of what that looks like in terms of percentage? Is it a CPI increase, or is it I know that the fuel excise will come off shortly, so that's another 10%, but maybe it's further in the report. The consenting, the removal of the island that's been mentioned around ECAN, we believe it should be an ECAN-led project or supported by ECAN. At whose cost is the question? Are we doing roading schools at this point?
No, we've passed roading, but let's just take your roading questions, Councillor, because you obviously got some. The inflationary impact on the budget last year was a combination of building costs plus bitumen sharp increases, which should level out going forward. Impacted us to around about I believe $2 million, roughly. The island work that we done in the river, the removal of the island at Colgate, that was done under an emergency protection. We got ability to protect the bridge 50 meters either side. So we took the obstacle out, which was the build up before the bridge. Okay. That's the roading bits.
Sorry. Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, a few questions and comments from me around surface waters. And this has been an ongoing discussion for years. And it's easy for us to go, it's someone else's problem. And unfortunately, in this space, it's easy for ECAN to go, it's your problem, or we're not doing anything about it, or we have no funding, or we seem to be caught in this space where there's the community feels there's just perceived excuses for work not being done. And I guess we ourselves need to think about, as we develop our next long-term plan, what are we willing to lean in on seeing happen? Because at the moment, in the last 3 years, Bob and I were at community meetings in Hororata talking about the money that would be spent, and council staff came up with plans on how that would be. And we've actually spent a lot of money and focused on the Hororata community, but there's ongoing issues and worry about the rainfall that'll happen this winter and the same or similar events as have been happening over the last number of flood events occurring again. Conversation with ECAN, we need to think about what we discuss and what we want from them. So Councillor Mackenzie, one of our ECAN councillors who's leading the work there, is happy to come and talk to us about gravel extraction and the gravel extraction work across Canterbury, but with a focus on Selwyn and where that currently sits. He also is leading work to talk with Waikirikiri landowners group around further protection. There's ECAN feels like they're connected in, but aren't landing on a solution that I think is acceptable. Well, it's not acceptable to me, and I don't think it's acceptable to our community around the solutions or the solutions that aren't being proposed at the moment. And some of the feedback has been we've wanted to get to a space where ECAN has a rate across our whole district to deal with all surface water issues, where everyone contributes and pays, but with those that live next door to rivers paying higher rates than those living in Rolleston, but recognising actually that keeping rivers and rivers, water and rivers is actually great for the whole community. And you can measure a river, and so long as you're pointing west from almost anywhere in Selwyn, 50 metres upriver is going to be 2 or 3 metres higher than where you're standing, because everything ramps up. So if a river breaks out 200 metres further west of your house than where you are downstream from that potential river flow. So we're all at risk, and Selwyn, the plains of Selwyn is a floodplain. So we need to make sure that we do see action on this, and I don't think that he can feel that. So in Selwyn, we've taken a real simple approach to rating. We've done it. Murray, England, you've taken us through land drainage rates, water rates, and we have a fairly simple and pragmatic way, I think, of getting on with recognising we need some funding, and the simpler you keep it, the better. ECAN hasn't taken that same route on a number of their rating discussions, and so we need to think about how we workshop our own solutions here and give them the blueprint for them to implement, because I think if we don't do that, I'm just not seeing the action from them to be able to drive that outcome. So, Madam Chair, I guess I'm asking for some workshop time for our council to be able to spend and receive from staff some options, draft options that we could then look at and think about how we get this work done. And I'll just note that the Future for Local Government review was released yesterday, and within that there's the conversation about having unitary authorities, and this is one of those times where actually having two councils trying to manage things with grey boundaries and areas isn't serving our community well. And if the decision making was all inside one building, someone becomes accountable. And at the moment, it feels like we're all sidestepping the issue a wee bit because it's a bit too grey. So I thank you for the report today, and Kate, for all the work that you're doing up there and stuff before you have done as well. It's good to see there is stuff done, but we're needing to take a bigger step forward, I think, as a council, and that rests with us as councillors as much as we're asking you to do as well.
Thanks, Sam. Elizabeth?
Hi, noting what's happened up north, it's a whole case of spend a little bit here now on the pre-prepared model rather than what's been the case for the councils and the cost now that the damage has been done from floods. So just a few questions. One of the questions is SnapSend solve an appropriate way for ratepayers to notify the council of flooding or potential surface water concerns? What can be done to remedy areas now to the surface water as a result of earthwork changes on neighbouring properties? Because it's something that comes up quite frequently in the community. Are council compliance / building consent teams qualified to preempt builds to ensure that they are not flood prone? That's obviously another thing that's needs to be rectified in the community. Thanks.
So in regards to your SnapSend solve question, yes, this is how we get most of our information across the district. Residents across the area give us vital information about what's going on the ground, as well as our operators out in the field. So yeah, we respond to those, and it comes through our asset management system that has, it's all documented and things like that. So yeah, no, that's a best way to contact us for those types of things. For the second question, you're talking about land use change, would you say, in relation to impacts?
Either legal or non-consenting earthwork changes on neighbouring properties that now causes the neighbour to have flooding issues in the winter.
So as part of our, part of our code of practice, then we would require that any effects of a new subdivision or works wouldn't be able to be impacting on the neighbours' properties. I mean, overland flow paths need to be retained. They need to show that they are doing so, and those types of changes.
So in the case of if there is an issue, like I say, whether it's a non-consented bit of earthworks, what can a neighbour do to rectify this?
It could be a compliance issue, and they would speak to that team regarding it. And then the last question was about building consents and I assume floor levels in relation to that. So that's also down to the code of practice and what requirements are set there about what flood levels and freeboard above those.
I could
Thank you.
just add on the building consents, councillors, that the surface waters team do get asked to make comments when building consent comes through. So, you know, there's not a whole reliance on the building consent division. There is up-to-date information passed through.
Thanks, Gareth. Now I'm going to ask Murray to make some comments, please.
Yes, my comments were around about the Hororata issue and probably reflective of the wider flooding issues. And obviously Cyclone Gabrielle and the effect around the country has heightened the concern amongst probably all landowners that what happens if something floods in my area. But I actually really want to support essentially what the Mayor has indicated. The work we've done in Hororata Township itself, you could argue, is the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. It's taken care of the water once it's got there. And over the last 3 years, we've spent a considerable amount of Selwyn funds from a very small land drainage district and from all of the township rated areas in the district. A number of the issues we receive concerns are from people who do not pay stormwater rates, have never paid stormwater rates. And so it becomes a fundamental issue as you go to the long-term plan. Yes, I support the idea of a workshop if you can to actually flesh out what either party can do, but it may be that a revenue and financing policy issue about rating districts and where do we want to pitch, and do we want to expand our township rating districts to encompass a larger rating area. Fundamentally, places like townships like Hororata are never going to change in elevation. They are fixed for long term. They are impacted by aggradation of gravel in rivers, gorse and broom in rivers that don't allow gravel to migrate down the rivers, and also land use change. And I think most people, when I've seen the conversations from the Hororata people, they understand that land use change has impacted on the area. That's more rapid runoff, and also farmers sometimes blocking off or filling in historic drainage paths. So there's a wider issue there that you can be proud of your council that you have spent quite a bit of township money on a wider issue in those places. And that's why we're reluctant to move on Springfield without having that conversation with ECAN, because we believe that's more and more fundamentally a river management issue than a township issue. So thanks for that. So I support the idea of a workshop at some stage in the next, before serious LTP discussions are held.
Listening to the debate, and as chair, I am aware of the flooding issues in Hororata go back numerous years with regards to the overflow paths, change in land use. And it's not only this township, there are other townships, but for Hororata and Springfield and Sheffield, they have had some major flooding of recent events that have brought this issue to light. I am going to request that this issue on surface water, Hororata, Springfield and Sheffield, be on matters of under action, and that actually allows us to follow through with a workshop with Environment Canterbury, with council, and I think it would be really good to engage with the community and have some community feedback. The reason why I'm saying this is because quite often it's the community who have lived in the residence for a long time, and they quite often have a history of local knowledge that with regards to talking with council staff, that is very, very valuable in the input and trying to solve some of these solutions. So I support Matters Under Action, a workshop with ECAN, and it would be really good if a part of that Matters Under Action report could actually engage with the community and get some community feedback on what their historical perspectives are. They may be right, they may be wrong, but they are a valuable source of knowledge that we need to consider. So that's my view as chair. And if someone doesn't agree with that view, can they please speak now? Shane.
Yeah, I agree with it. I just was wondering where Taumatu is at on that flooding situation as well.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
I think moving forward that iwi will be involved in any of these considerations. And talking to the community, the local communities, you open up quite a breadth of discussion. This, to some degree, always has to be tempered by, it's a level of service discussion. You have to factor in the benefits versus the cost of doing it. So if people want something across the district, we've got to indicate whether the district is prepared to pay for it and the community is prepared to pay for it, or are they seeking other funding opportunities outside of rates?
Bob?
Yeah, in saying that we should consult with the communities, I think we're doing that really well now. There is a group in Hororata that have set them up with the blessing of everybody in Hororata, basically. They've done a map of what they see. Staff are working with them. So I think until there's some answers, I don't think there's worth having a public meeting when there's no answers. To go there with pie in the sky isn't going to help. I think it'll actually make it worse. So I think that we should let what's happening at the moment between the staff and this group, who they believe they have the answers, and let's see what turns out of that, and then have the workshop and decide what we want.
Thanks, Bob, for that input. Sam?
Yeah, I was going to say the same as Bob. I think there's already lots of groups set up with leaders who are endorsed by their communities who are leading this work already.
Okay.
And so maybe there's a specific invite to 2 or 3 members of those people to come and be a part of the wider discussion. But I wouldn't, if we go back to the community, there's just frustration upon frustration, which we've heard, and that's actually what we need to action rather than just hear again. I think otherwise, as Bob said, we'll be expected to turn up with answers, which we won't have, which only frustrates further.
Okay, thank you. So this item will be workshopped and highlighted matters under action. So we do actually have a timeline with regards to this surface water flooding in the upper part of the Waikirikiri catchment. Right, parks and reserves, I think was next. Thank you.
Curbside. Yep. Just do a quick change, Mike.
All right.
Just doing a quick change. Thanks, Kate. Any questions around curbside resource recovery pack? Everything's ticking along nicely in that space. No.
I just have one
Yes,
question.
sorry, Elizabeth.
Yeah, are you able to identify in terms of, I think there was one contaminated delivery, was that for the recycling? Are you able to identify the household where that comes from? And yeah.
Yeah. Who can come up?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So it wasn't a single household, it was actually effectively a suburb which had increasingly higher contamination levels, and that was Farringdon. So what we actually did was, off the back of that, because we were sort of quite disappointed, is one way to describe it, that we'd had our first rejected load since June last year. We did a specialised leaflet drop calling out Farringdon directly and said, basically, hey, Farrington, we need your help. We've had our first rejected load. And we had some information on there. We had it double-sided with some other information on the back. And since then, we've had a significant improvement in the contamination levels from that Friday collection. So yeah, really, really pleased. And we moved really quickly with the comms team and got something out and had subsequent improvements. So yeah.
Okay. Shane, do you have your light on?
Yeah, I did. But have we already moved, Madam Chair? We already moved past wastewater.
Yes.
None.
Yes. Do you have a question?
I just had a question around unauthorised trade waste discharge, and this is a new discharge or an existing repetitive discharge.
Potentially a repetitive discharge. We have noticed some goings on for some time. The last discharge, which used from memory, a significant amount of dye, obviously turned the bioreactors down at the Pines, which, as you can imagine, are a usual colour. They were coloured a blue Powerade. But we were able to trace it back, and we've spoken to the people and we've managed to identify it. So it shouldn't happen anymore.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Parks and reserves.
No. Okay, moving on. Speed management plan update or any questions? Mike's joined us to be able to, he's leading that piece of work. Is there any questions?
I guess now's a good
Yes.
time, Mike. You're
Okay,
sitting there now.
Phil?
You've got something in front of you. Around the schools, it is I guess it's a speed thing there. So past Whedon School.
Yep. So we've been in regular contact with Whedon School. I think Sam's emailed the principal there as recently as this morning.
30 minutes ago.
So effectively, speed past all our schools won't be implemented until our speed management plan is certified with Waka Kotahi, which is expected sort of hopefully to the latter end of the year, early next year, by the time we've finished all our regulatory sort of obligations for that. As far as the congestion and parking works that we had discussions with Whedon's about, we've provided them with design options. A lot of the options encompass MOE land. So therefore we've sort of recommended that Whedon's look to get a safe system audit, which may support them with funding applications through MOE, which may be able to be cost shared and some sort of redesign of their pickup drop-off points.
That's great. Thanks. It's good to see something's happening really positive there, and I know they'll be appreciative too. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Sorry for all the questions today. 5.1 of the report, it says community requested reductions via service request. I was just looking for some clarity on what avenue you like to receive those through. And 5.2, is the State Highway 73 Waddington Road intersection speed zone, is that the 72 Inland Scenic Route and 73 intersection? Because I just know that Waddington Road's quite a way off that intersection. And third question, I'll just give them all at once. What suggestions or recommendations is Selwyn District Council providing Waka Kotahi for their speed management plan?
So in relation to your first request, what we've effectively done is correlated and analysed service requests that have come in to date for requests for speed reductions on particular roads. Going forward, at the moment, this is the only sort of avenue we'll receive those sort of requests is via a snap send solve sort of service request requesting a reduction. Although I'd stress it's not really, there'll be an opportunity for members of the public to provide feedback and consultation when the speed management plan comes in. Logistically, for us to respond to every service request requesting a speed limit would take our time away from preparing the speed management plan. So that would be my sort of answer to that. As far as the Waddington State Highway section, I believe so. I would really have to double check on the interim speed management plan from Wakokotei. I don't have it in front of me. Yeah, unfortunately, so I'd have to get back to you on. And for recommendations for the full speed management plan by Wakokotei on state highways, council as a whole have a contact point. As staff, we can prepare recommendations and make submissions. So can elected members, councils as an RCA and community boards. We have a direct contact that I think you're aware of to make those submissions to. Members of the public can also make submissions via Wakokotei's website, contact us and just highlight their concerns around speeds that involve state highways.
Cool. So are we putting forward suggestions to Wakokotei?
We will prepare a letter, primarily probably around speed through townships and pedestrian crossing locations for townships. Therefore, speed management plan is still in the being prepared. At the moment, our sort of key focus is trying to get our speed management prepared as well.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
And Shane.
Thank you. Just in relation to the schools, I see Leaston High School and primary school aren't on the list. Is there any reason why they aren't?
On which list?
Those are schools on state highways, Shane.
So, oh yes, sorry. I was okay, thank you.
And I would just like to, sorry, Sam, you were next.
Thank you. If we're going to submit to Wakokotei, can I suggest that we do it together as a council rather than each councillor thinking that they'll go off and do their own submission? Let's see what we can include together, and the strength of us as an organisation and partner of Wakokotei, I think, carries more strength. And if there's things that we don't agree with, then that's another conversation. But let's have the conversation together first. The State Highway 73 intersections, Waddington Road is that 72, 73, and the other station road is Aylesbury intersection. So you know where those are within the report. And if we're going to be talking to Wakokotei, I think there's this ongoing piece around not the overall speed, but actually what the entry to our towns on state highways is. We've now adopted bilingual signage, and I know Wakokotei is looking at what their signage is. So I would expect that entries into towns signs would be bilingual moving forward. And often the conversation is about moving those out from where they currently sit, and people heading from 100 down to 50 once they're basically in the town. And even if it's staged or warning signs about 50 ahead, that's the type of conversation that I know our community wants to have with those changes.
Thank you for your questions. And I'd just like to highlight with regards to the next item, funding of roads. It was actually asked for by Councillor Shane Epihar, to understand how our roads were actually funded, and it's submitted there for information. Does anybody have any questions or want some further understanding on how our roads are consequently funded? I guess I have a concern as a chair with regards to the pressure on the government funding that assists us with our roading, in the fact that we cannot charge for electric vehicles, and we have put a lot of emphasis on cycleways and footpaths, and consequently we are not collecting funding from that service as well. And given the hierarchy of projects up in the North Island due to weather events, I can see a shortfall in funding or an increase in the tax intake somewhere along the line to actually equalise out our funding just to support our roading network that we currently have. So this is going to be a challenging area I can foresee going into the future. Shane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing the question back up again. It was really just around the figure of 2 million. Really, that's more than likely a catch-up figure. And what does it look like? How are we planning for the future if we're always in catch-up mode? Really, you've addressed it there. And as we look towards the future for local government, the opportunity for different levels or different opportunities for funding that will really come through, but we consistently are at the bottom of the cliff and behind it. And my question was really around in the report, if there's due to be, looks like there's going to be a significant impact, what is that number and where should we be? And we've had this conversation before, Gareth, around that gets us back to level but actually we need to be going beyond that to continue to rate for it. And I guess that'll be part of the long-term plan, but as we know, roads is always the major issue.
Thanks, Shane. Sophie?
Yeah, I mean, with regard to funding, I guess I just wanted to point out, like, so you mentioned about EVs. The government's done a review of road user charges, but they haven't actually come out with what they're going to, whether they will change anything or even what the results of the select committee and the submissions were yet. So everyone is waiting on that one. It's not a Selwyn specific matter. But the other part is, I don't think we really have prioritised things like cycleways here. We've got a few that we got government funding for the long distance ones, but most of our cycle paths are a bit of paint on the side of a road or a slightly wider path, which are doing pretty well until you get more people walking as well, which is great. But then you have that other hierarchy of needs, which is the most vulnerable people should be protected first. So I guess even if we had more cycleways and more people walking and through ECAN, more people catching a bus, that actually reduces the impact of damage of vehicles on the roads. So it comes around in a different way. It's just one of those chicken and egg things of how do you get it happening in an optimal level. But yes, the current road user charges system doesn't work for that. They're looking at it. Whether any government of any colour is going to do a good job of fixing that, I have no idea. To be honest, my main concern is more around things like with the Better Off funding plan that we had for Lincoln Town Centre, where we're starting part of it and now we no longer look like we're going to have the funding to finish the job. So we're going to build more car parks, which enables more people to drive, but we're not actually going to put the next stage in unless we can somehow find another few million. But that's not necessarily the matter of this particular topic. It's, yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, thanks. We haven't prioritised cycling at all. We've made cycling a little bit easier than it used to be, but there's far more that we can do in that space. But my comments are around the funding piece. Waka Kotahi borrowed $2 billion last year. We can't do that every year on year. So it's not just a problem that we're facing. There's a national problem around transport funding. And in the last month, I've spoken with both the previous Minister of Transport and the current interim Minister of Transport, who hopes he's not the Minister forever, but they're feeling like the EV piece is inconsequential to the total problem that we've got. It's single-digit millions in a billions of dollars budget. So charging RUC, RACON, EVs doesn't solve the problem and isn't the biggest gap that we've got. And we need the government to totally transform the way that transport is funded and come up with a new model. So while we are challenged with this, our neighbours are challenged with this, and LGNZ is very aware and is advocating to the government on that matter. And it has been raised in meetings that I've been in with the Labour Party and with the National Party and with the Green Party as we work towards the next elections to make sure they're aware of local government's concerns around transport funding.
Thanks, Sam, for that update. Now I'll go on to the next item. Oh, sorry, Manager.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to just add a few comments around that road funding issue. The government policy statement on roading was due out early July. It's likely to have been delayed a few weeks because of changes in the ministerial responsibility. But that will give you a bit of an indication where the current government is looking at in terms of the next NLTP. Remembering that we're currently just moving into the third year of the current NLTP, which means our funding is fixed. There's no more money available in the current 3 years. No matter if we overspend, there's no more government money. our opportunity is in the next few months as we prepare our business case for the 24-27 LTP to put our best foot forward. But that might require a step up and also in council contribution to funding. Wherever at the moment, there is a funding crisis. They believe they will get through this current NLTP okay, but it's problematic about the next one in terms of overall funding. In terms of the current funding mechanism, the hypothecated account, I think everybody thinks it's broken, and at some point we'll probably have to move to a congestion pricing type model where you pay for the road you use at the time you use it, because that'll be a fairer than the current model. Basically, as vehicles become more efficient, they're paying less in fuel tax. So that's actually the funding diminishing for something that needs more investment. So in terms of the Sophie's comment about the Lincoln Town Centre, yes, the second tranche of money has disappeared. That'll be that'll be a long-term plan discussion about how you fund the future of the Lincoln Town Centre project.
Thanks, Nada.
Yep. Okay. Nearly there. Just to conclude, because I know this topic lies on the table still.
Yes, it does.
Quick. Yeah. Perryman's Road. Perryman's Road, just a quick update in there. We're underway. We've spoken with Waka Kotahi. We've met with Waka Kotahi, and the safe system audit is underway, and Waka Kotahi have contributed information into that process as well. So hopefully in the next month, 6 weeks, that will be through, and we'll bring that information back through to council.
So just for clarification, Perryman's Road is still on the table. We haven't lifted it, okay? But it will be coming back with a full report for us to lift off the table.
As
Thank you.
requested by councillors. Yep. Final areas, there's just some corridor management statistics in there. As you can see, still very, very busy around the district. A simple drive around will show you how much work is still going on in our road corridors, and some road naming that has gone through in the past month.
Madam Chair, tēnā tātou, Karimata Oaks, I was wondering whether the Māori names given there have been in consultation with mana whenua. And B, in the next page, no specific implications for Māori have been identified in this operational update. It seems contradictory. If there hasn't been any consultation, and whether the development needed to as well. So
I'll have to get back to you, find an answer for you on that one, councillor, and I'll get back to you. That's me.
Not quite. I did actually ask a query in the appendices around the focus of CORD, page 84, with regards to water services, and KPI 15, complete and accurate contract management plans and issues. And thank you for getting back to me, but just for the record, that issue has now been resolved and it is no longer an issue. Is that correct?
That's correct. Just remember, these KPIs are backward looking. So you're looking at April KPIs. We're in June now. CORD have updated their contract management plan and sent it through. So on the next KPI record that you'll see, that will no longer be read.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks very much for your staff and your report. Thank you. Emergency management up next. Al. I've got to go back one. I've slipped up. Operational delivery, that we received the report. Can I have a mover for that, Elizabeth, and a seconder, Sam? All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Now emergency management. Thank you.
I'll take that you've all read the
Report
Report.
and any questions?
and everybody's happy.
Any questions with regards to the report? Elizabeth?
Oh, yep. I just wondered if us councillors will be having any updates with Clara while she's here, or is that just going to be staff?
So at the moment, she is working on the framework. She hasn't finished the framework yet about resilience. So until she has finished it, then no. But once we have got it finished, then if you would like to have a discussion about it, absolutely. She goes week after next to work with Scion on a project looking at wildfire and district plans and looking at some case studies around New Zealand.
Phil?
I guess, look, it's contained in the reporting. What's the thing that keeps you awake in terms of our preparedness?
Alpine fault.
No. Actually, Alpine fault, it is what it is. I've highlighted the key areas that we need to address, and one of them is training, and one of them is the ability of us to stand up an EOC for an extended period. That may be an Alpine fault, but we have 19 known faults within Selwyn. Some of the bigger ones are Torlease and Porters, that on a nice sunny day when there might be some snow up on the hills and our 6 ski fields, you could have thousands of people up there. That's probably the biggest thing that keeps me awake at night. Ski fields, the Transalpine, Cave Stream, and a whole lot of people in the high country on a lovely day. A recipe for disaster if we have a reasonable size earthquake up there. So I did address that with ski fields the other day. So I attended the Canterbury Avalanche Response Meeting, which is led by police. We're up at Porters. We spoke with all the ski fields, including Mount Hutt, emergency services, helicopter services, and talked about what their response is. They tend to focus on one single event, and they're going to exercise that on the 22nd of July, and I'll be involved in that. But what I put to them was that actually, if we have multiple avalanches, nobody's coming.
You're right.
If you can't fly. And so what is your plan? Where are you going to evacuate people to? Where are the safe areas on your ski fields? You have a duty of care for the people that are on your ski fields. You need to think about that stuff. So I pushed it back to the ski fields, and I think it's really important. And so the Are You Prepared presentation that we're doing next week is similar. And it's saying to people, we may not be able to come and help you. What are you doing to help yourselves?
Okay. Shane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tēnā tātou, kia ora, tēnā koe, Al. I attended the training last night as a volunteer member of the Leaston community. There must have been about 67 or 80 people here last night, and it was a really good, it was 80 people here last night. It was a fantastic turnout of volunteers, especially from Castle Hill. They've filled out all over there. But what was a couple of things that you said, the council's commitment to defence and civil defence has really held us in good stead throughout the country, and we are looked at and looked to as a leader in that space. So long may that continue. Just a little bit sad weren't nominated for an award actually at local government, but mate, you'll always, and your team will always have an award here. And so high praise and commendation to yourself and the team and all of our volunteers. We spoke a little bit about the system that you're currently using at the moment, the D4H, and how that overlaps and talks to other users, including traffic and ECAN and that type of thing. So investment well worth its value, and it'll continue to support our community. So just a commendation, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Can I have a mover that the...
Can I just ask a couple of things? Sorry, Deborah, can I just ask a couple of things?
Sorry, I didn't see you.
Okay. Thanks, Al, for the report. My comment first of all is just around how great our volunteers are, just the same as Shane has just said, and the awards that I attended last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago now, and giving out 5-year awards to people that have been involved in supporting the welfare of our communities prior to that 5 years too. But now you've given them a structure and the ability to connect and then grow their own leadership skills. It actually provides extra capacity within our communities, the work that you and your staff do with our volunteers. So thank you for that. My question is around us as an organisation and the ability to operate an EOC in a large event, given the turnover of staff that we've had as an organisation and the reliance that you and your team have on being able to call on the people that sit within this building or around. Where is that sitting currently? Are you comfortable with the training that's been provided to new members of staff? And can you just give it, where are we? Are we ready? Is there work to be done? How are you finding that from an SDC perspective?
So I think in my first report a couple of months ago, I spoke about speaking to the ELT and the commitment of our staff to an event. They endorsed that all staff should be involved in emergency management. And so therefore we are about 2 weeks away from a all of staff compulsory training package, which is an online introduction to what the EOC looks like and how it operates. I speak at the orientation workshops that the people in capability run, really, really good. And I just talk about what we do and how they can be invested in that and how it's really good for their professional development. And we've had a really good uptake from people from right across the council saying, I'd like to be involved. And there's some brilliant skills that people bring to this organisation, which are outside what their day role is, which is just great. So I'm encouraged. We're probably a third of the way through the journey. We could stand up an EOC. One of the key things is functional managers. Canterbury Group has struggled to get functional manager work training going. So again, we have people within the organisation. These are volunteers. So someone who was an NCO, so non-commissioned officer within the Defence Force, who did intel, and their training is years. So I've just had a conversation with him. He has just looked at the NEMA training and pulled it to pieces and put it back together again, and he's making some recommendations on how we can get that to be really, really good. Intel is somewhere where we're not there yet, and it drives a response. If you don't know what's happening, you can't make good decisions. So I'm working really, really hard on that, using the resources at hand and working with Canterbury Group. And so that's right across Canterbury. There's a gap in intel and there's a gap in functional manager and leadership within EOCs, that training. So we're working hard on that.
Cool, thank you. And just to say, Murray, at the beginning of the meeting, we acknowledge your work for this organisation and your manager's role, but actually when it comes to emergencies, you're always in the room wearing the white jacket, taking your turn at guiding the whole thing. And yeah, your learning and skill will be required in that space wherever you are. And I don't know how long you're intending on being around for us to draw on that beyond your time in the building too.
You can speak to that.
I'm intending to stay on as a controller. As a volunteer. That's the kind until the manager annoys me, so I don't. But no, that's the intention. That and look, that's really a good point. We have got very experienced controllers, but we're always looking for more experienced controllers. And having the mixture of internal and external is quite important, because remembering that in any emergency, the business has to continue operating, and that's normally the challenge for the CE, as the business as usual has to operate while you're actually having people pulled away to on an event. So yeah, our runs a very good training program.
So Murray's going to Massey University.
Sorry, carry on.
Murray's going to Massey University before the end of the year to be qualified as a national controller. So,
Oh, nice.
I tried to talk him out of retiring But then I said, if you don't do that, can you do this? So we'll put them on contract.
Okay. Last question from Sophie, and then we'll get a mover and seconder for the report.
Sorry, hopefully a quick one. Well, actually two. One was, should we be doing the micro-credential training as well?
Absolutely. Why not?
Sweet.
So we can,
I'd
it'll be on
keen to,
Compass
so.
hopefully within the next couple of weeks.
Nice. And the other one was just thinking about the fact that if you're doing, if there is an emergency or when you're scoping out your contacts and everything ready for an emergency, is there ever anything that you encounter that that should be known to other departments? That's kind of like because quite a lot of the time we look at things from quite a top level down, and good response stuff quite often is knowing what's at the bottom there, what might sort of fall apart. Like, is there anything that should be being fed back from what you've found elsewhere that has been found during an exercise that might be a limitation that, we should be funding something to fix? It's a very fluffy question, sorry.
So I work on this document, which I would hope that you all have. If you don't have it, I'll flick it out. It's the National Disaster Resilience Strategy. Resilience is absolutely key to it, what we do going forward. It's part of what Clara is doing. If you don't have it, let me know. I'll flick it out to you. But that is a foundational document. And I suppose in some ways, that is the document I use to go and annoy a lot of places within council and people within council to say, what are you doing? And if they're doing something, then I champion it. But if they're not doing, I say, what can we do to help? Because resilience is done by 90% of resilience is done outside emergency management. It's done by the building team. It's done by Denise's team, community resilience, that sort of stuff. So part of my role is to encourage, enable, ask questions, annoy people, just to see what we can do together, because it's that unity of effort that makes a difference. So short, yes.
Okay, that's great, because you've answered way better than I questioned. Okay. But making so that when there is an emergency is not as much of an emergency because half of it's already set up.
The relationships and a lot of people see me having coffees with people, but building relationships before an emergency stand you in good stead during the emergency and after the emergency. So that relationship building with all our partners, you see police will walk in here. They said to me the other day, if there's a big adverse event, they'll be walking across here with their tactical options and they'll be camping and using this place here because it's IL4 as their police station until we get a new one.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Can I have a mover and a seconder that the Transport and Infrastructure Committee receives the report and an update of the emergency management at Selwyn District Council for May 2023. Sophie and Bob. All in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? None. Carried. Thank you, Al. Right, Murray, England, you're up next.
All right, good afternoon, councillors, Mayor and Chair. Been quite a lot of interesting conversations today, actually. It's been quite good listening to that. So this report is on the asset management team, and on the public agenda, we're starting on page 95. And then immediately turning the page, the first 3 points there, point 4, 5 and 6 are really just an update for information. The first one's about asset management maturity assessment, and that's a separate report coming after this one. One water strategy is going really well. It's our co-designed process. So far, we've drafted a narrative, a vision, guiding principles, goals, and some policies, which are coming together really, really well. And this will be a workshop with council later on today. We also have a sports lighting strategy, which was workshops this morning with council. So just letting the public know those things are going ahead. In terms of Three Waters reform, for us as council, it's slowing down a wee bit in terms of requests for further information and our involvement in that. I will just touch on a couple of things. In terms of engagement, there is a CE's workshop with iwi and the DIA coming up on Wednesday the 5th of July, and that's to look at how they're going to roll out the new 10-entity model and how councils can get involved in that process. So we'll be more to report back on that. The second part of the consultation is that I was involved in a meeting for DIA council staff from those council within entities I and J. on Friday the 9th of June. So it's just been. And there was a time for us to talk to DIA saying, this is what we found really good with the process so far. This is what we think can be improved, and please stop doing these things. So it's quite a fruitful meeting. We definitely got a lot of stuff off our chest, which was good. And hopefully the DIA found that easy too, because now we're going through a reset. A lot of the work we've done, it's not necessarily a full repeat, but there will be some duplication and now restructuring everything. So if we can learn from the mistakes that we've done in the past or the processes, we can streamline that for our staff going forward. Skip through quite a lot of the rest of the Three Waters update, and I'll just move to Rakai Huts. I think it's probably going to be a point of interest for councillors in our community. So that's on page 98 of the public agenda, section 8. So, as you know, we made a submission for an exemption for chlorination for Upper Sound Huts that was declined. We have now approached Tamatarawai and said, listen, we're not happy about that, but we want to work with you to move this forward. We met with 3 Tamatarawai staff. When was that? Sorry, on Wednesday, the 7th of June. So they flew down from Wellington and we had a really productive meeting about forging the way forward. And so we've agreed on a number of improvements to get our scheme to a point where they would consider providing us an exemption. And so I don't want to provide false hope, but we are reasonably confident that we are going to get there. There is some more physical works we need to do on site to get to that point. So our next stage is we're going to document the final improvements that need to be made, and we've made a lot of improvements since the first report came through. They're going to give us indications of what they think about that. We'll implement them, we'll reapply for exemption, and we're hopeful that we'll get that through. Once we do get that exemption through, and of course there's a chance we won't, but we believe we will, there will be a report then to council saying this is what we needed to do and this is the level of standard we had to achieve for the Rakai Hut scheme. If we now apply that across all our water supplies, this is a cost that's going to be incurred to reach that standard, and then it's I suppose a conversation ahead of the long-term plan. Do we want to pursue that or not? So it could well be that it's a community by community decision. So you might say, Rolleston, if you want to do this, your rates will go up as a targeted rate to go non-chlorination, or intermittent chlorination is what we're calling it now. We can't say we'll have no chlorination ever, because there's a really high bar. So any sense or risk of contamination, we will have to temporarily chlorinate those schemes. So we are now changing the terminology to intermittently or chlorinated or something along those lines. And then I suppose from that conversation we can make a choice about whether we go forward with that or not. So I think that's probably me, Deborah. I'll probably just take questions from that point on.
Okay, thank you. Lydia.
With the chlorine exemption, I just wonder in that report that will be included to council, will there be financial information with that stating the cost?
Or Rakai Huts?
Or implications, for Rakai Huts. So that might give us an idea over the...
Yep, absolutely. We're kind of fortunate. We chose Rakai Huts because it's our lowest risk supply, and it's also very small. So any improvements, it's actually quite small scale. Per household, it's probably equivalent to every other scheme, but we can kind of absorb that as a district. So that's a good case study. But going forward, if you want to do the same what we're doing for Rakai Huts for Rolleston, there's quite a different cost implication.
Yeah, that's right. It's a best case.
Yeah. So now we'll come back with those full financials.
Cool. Thank you.
Phil.
Intermittent chlorination with a bar that's really high. Does that mean that even if we do get past the bar on other communities as we go forward, spend a lot of money on these things here, we still may have chlorination for large percentages of the time because the bar's so high? And I guess the question is that I imagine will be covered in the report, what you mean by high bar and intermittent.
Perhaps I'll give an example. So back in the day, with the old drinking water standards, they'll say if you've got 10 E. coli in your water supply, then you should consider issuing a boil water notice. And as time's gone on, we said actually we don't accept any E. coli in our water supplies, and we started to add chlorination as a temporary measure to resolve that. Going forward, we're now looking at total coliforms, which is an indicator of E. coli, which is an indication of contamination. And so if you're getting total coliforms in your water supply, then we'll start to intermittently chlorinate. So that's what I mean by that. Right. There'll also be processes that we have to prove that we can, in fact, instantly chlorinate. And so we would have to do trial runs on a semi-regular basis. I can't put a time frame on that, but maybe monthly or quarterly or whatever the case may be, that all of a sudden would say, right, we're running a scenario immediately, but permanently chlorinate now, or not permanently, but chlorinate instantly, and then see how fast we can get that instant response done. So it's those kind of things. It's changing our mindset. We will never be fully chlorination free again. We'll be that intermittently chlorinated.
Really interested to see the report when it comes out. Yeah,
it will be quite a discussion piece, I'm sure.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Shane.
Thank you. Well done, Murray. It's, great work with yourself and the team, especially in the confidence that we will get to the mark. Looking at our matrix, our existing matrix at the moment, are you confident that a number of the newer schemes will qualify as well? Will they require further upgrades and turn cost as well?
Yes, interesting one. So there will be potentially upgrades to existing treatment plants that we've just been building, and it's around virus protection. So at the moment, the drinking water standards is silence on virus protection, and it seems that this chlorine exemption application is almost drafting the new draft standards for New Zealand on virus protection. Viruses are dealt with chlorination, and that's why there's nothing in the standards at the moment, because the government has assumed that there will be chlorination in all supplies, and so viruses are dealt with chlorination. You can also resolve viruses or minimise the risk by having a very high dosed UV treatment of those. So our UV treatments devices are designed for bacteria and protozoa, but to kill viruses, you need something substantially larger. So we have upgraded the Rakai Huts UV system to cope with viruses. But as an example, the UV unit for Rakai Huts, which is only a small settlement, is now the same size as West Mountain. And so when we look at the Rolleston, where we've got a real, I'm not sure if it's a technical term, but a real donkey of a thing, it's going to be even larger than that. And so there's some really cost implications with that, not just with the purchasing of the equipment, but also the running costs, electricity, maintenance costs of renewing bulbs, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a real cost implication about going chlorine free. Rakai Huts is giving us a really good blueprint of what that looks like. But then there will be a cost discussion to come.
Okay. Thanks, Murray, for your report. No further questions. Can I have a mover that the committee receives the report of the Asset Management Monthly Update for information? Malcolm and Nicole. All in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? None. Carried. You are the author of the next report. Okay. I'd just like to make a comment with regards to this committee adopting the updated infrastructure asset management policy. It has come to our attention that under the terms of reference, there is not clarity or around whose responsibility it is to actually approve both delegation and policy changes. So to be on the safe side, without that clarification, it has been agreed that the infrastructure asset management policy and delegation will be transferred through to council. So that clarifies that particular report. So it will be on the council agenda and it will be able to be debated at the council. So thank you for very much reading it, and we will. Thanks, Murray. And the next person we have is Capital Works Update.
Want me to introduce Kamal?
Oh, Kamal, sorry, you can, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. Kamal, been to a couple of meetings, but I'd like to formally introduce Kamal Narang, who's our new head of Capital Works. This is his first time reporting to council.
We will keep that in mind when we're asking our questions.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Tēnā koutou. Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. So this is the Capital Works Monthly Delivery Update, and I take it that this report is read. This report is focused more on advising of the capable team that we have in Selwyn District Council, the consultants that we utilize, and the framework for reporting. That's what this report is focused on. Is there any question? And I'm happy to answer that.
Any questions on the capital works update? Ah,
Great.
that makes it so much easier.
I've got a good.
If there's no questions, look, thank you very much for your report. I'm not saying that next time you won't get off so easy.
Thank you.
So you have probably another report in public excluded that we will draw you back. It might be a different story then, but thank you. So can I have a mover and a seconder that the Transport and Infrastructure Committee receives the Capital Works monthly delivery update for information? Malcolm and Phil, all those in favour say aye. Those against, none. Carried. Now we need a resolution to exclude the public. Phil? Nicole? All those in favour say aye. Those against? None. Carried. We'll have a break for 5 minutes and then we will address the public excluded parts of the agenda. Thank you.